Good afternoon and welcome to Seniors Count. I'm your host, Annette Richardson. On our show, we believe that you are the foundation on which Boston was built. So our goal is to connect you to resources, benefits, and information to enhance your life. Thank you for joining us. Today, my guest is Helen Rennie, founder and instructor of Helen's Kitchen, a hands-on cooking school. She's here to teach us about kitchen knives and their tasks, how to keep them sharp, how to cut vegetables properly, and how to handle them safely. Welcome to our show, Helen.
Thank you, Annette. Pleasure to be here.
Good. And as you notice, we're standing up today, so we're going to be doing some work. Okay. So can you tell me what's the most common misconception about how to buy kitchen knives?
Well, most people feel that if they spend a lot of money on a kitchen knife, say $200, it's going to be a great knife and they won't have to sharpen it. It's going to keep its edge for a good long time. And if they buy a cheap knife, well, of course, it's bad. But the price has nothing to do with it. It's really all about your sharpening skills. And people don't realize that they have to do something with their knife every single day they're going to cook. They need to hone their knife, and we'll go over that today. So the knife here that we're going to use, it's a Victorinox knife. You probably have heard of that company. They make Swiss Army knives. They also make excellent knives that lots of professional cooks love, and this sells for about like $40. The prices change, but this is not a $200 knife, because sometimes people come to my classes and they say, oh, I love your knives. How much did you spend? And the answer is probably less than they did.
Yeah. That's good. So what's the difference between sharpening a knife and honing a knife?
So when you're sharpening a knife, you're removing metal from the edge. So metal actually comes off to give you a new edge. An edge is basically a little point, like a triangle. And when you're honing a knife, you're not taking metal off, you're bending existing metal. So what happens to our knives on a daily basis, say we cut one sweet potato or butternut squash, some hard vegetable, or just like a couple of pounds of onions, is that the edge is no longer a nice triangle. Its tip gets kind of bent and warped, you know, and so it doesn't feel sharp anymore. It lost that beautiful razor-sharp edge and doesn't go through a tomato and stuff like that. So that knife doesn't need sharpening. We don't need to remove metal. We simply need to take that existing bent edge and make a straight line out of it.
Okay.
And that's honing. And sharpening is actually ripping metal off.
Taking metal off it to produce another clean,
new, completely new edge. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Sharpening is not something you need to do daily. That's something you might need to do every 6 to 12 months, depending on how often you cook. But honing is something that you do need to do every day.
Before you use it.
It's a quick thing. It takes whole about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
But it does have to happen daily.
Okay, that's good. And also, after you hone it, you still should wipe it down.
You know, after honing, because it's such a smooth stick, it's 1,000 grit, at least mine is, it's a ceramic steel. You don't need to do anything. If you sharpen, then yes, you definitely need to wipe it off and wash it. But if you hone, the only thing is that this is an acquired skill, and I'll show you guys how this works. But for most people, it takes a tad too much practice to get good at this. So if you do use other assisting tools like this is not actually honing, it is sharpening. And people say, but I thought you said you shouldn't sharpen every day. Well, you don't need to, but it's easy. And if this works, you know, and it is sharpening, you can do it every day. But after this, you do need to wash a knife. Because you will actually see, if you swipe your finger, you'll see a little bit of gray dust. Yes, the true honing should not give you any dust whatsoever. There should be nothing on the knife at all.
All right. That's good to know, because I make my fiance wash it every time he does.
After a stick?
After he does the honing.
Yeah, after the stick is not necessary, but any, you know, there's Chef's Choice, this is AccuSharp, they're all different tools like this. They actually sharpen, they don't hone.
Okay.
So, but hey, if they work, they work.
Yes. All right. Now, how often do you test your knife for sharpness, or should you?
Well, Eventually, you don't test it that much. You know how vegetables should feel. But when you're learning, the most common question is, how do I know I'm doing it right? Is this sharp enough? How should it feel? And well, a ripe tomato is a good test. Your knife should go through without like pressing, just gliding the knife, it should go through. But tomatoes are not always in season. What if you don't have a tomato on hand? You probably always have a piece of paper on hand. And a good sharp knife should slice through a piece of paper nice and easy. And if you can do that, you can cook with it. And if you can't do that, then it's probably a dull knife that you'll have to put extra pressure to chop, and it becomes a chore and a pain. So, when you have a knife that can just go through paper nice, smooth, it will go through vegetables nice and smooth.
All right. That's a good quick test.
Yeah. So that's how you test it for sharpness.
Okay. And we'll talk about cutting boards really quickly.
Cutting boards. So, and this is a good general principle to understand that the knife can touch anything you want it to touch, like no glass lasagna pan, because anything that's harder than a knife will damage it. So the two materials that are not harder than a knife is wood and plastic. I know some people have those glass cutting boards. Yeah, oh, that's a death to your knife. So don't cut on counters, no granite, no marble, doesn't matter what your counter is made out of, don't cut on counters. It's also not very hygienic because you can't sterilize your whole counter you could, not easily. So wood and plastic, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages.
Okay.
So the advantage of wood is that when I chop on wood, it sounds nice and soft. You don't hear a lot of banging.
Okay.
It's also the easiest on the knives.
Okay.
But there are lots of downsides. So the first downside is that you cannot put it in a dishwasher. Second downside is if you wash it by hand, no soaking, you wash it and immediately you have to dry it.
Okay.
Because if any moisture absorbs into the wood board, it will warp. It will basically bend like this or split, and it's not going to be a happy board. You also need to oil them once in a while. Okay. So to tell the truth, I use wood boards very rarely.
Okay.
They are very handy for making videos because you get good contrast, between a white onion, because white onion on a white board, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
So I brought one today, but sometimes people feel bad if they use plastic boards, and I don't want them to feel bad. I use plastic boards all the time. Plastic boards are convenient. You can pop them in the dishwasher. Just get something that is, nice, about half an inch thick, so that it's not those flimsy boards that.
Yeah. What about like if you're hand washing, you don't have a dishwasher? Can you use bleach? Not on this, but
not
on a plastic.
On plastic, you can. That's another wonderful thing. So
do.
Plastic, if you cut up a chicken and then you want to wash it and cut up a vegetable, that's perfectly fine. You can pop it through a dishwasher to sterilize it, or if you don't have one, a weak bleach solution will do the job.
Okay.
But a wood board, like I would not be cutting up chicken on this and then doing vegetables, even if I wash it. This is my vegetable board only.
Okay.
So.
All right.
One important thing that I'll mention about cutting boards is that it would be very good to stabilize them.
Yes.
So this board normally would not slide, at least on most kitchen counters it wouldn't. This is a little bit slick surface, so I did what I shouldn't do. See? Well, sometimes good to show people what not to do. I put a damp paper towel underneath to keep it steady. This is a fabulous technique for plastic boards, because a damp paper towel will not damage your plastic board whatsoever, and it keeps it firm and steady, because a sliding board is dangerous.
Yes.
For a wood board, this is not something I would recommend doing on a regular basis. I'm just doing it because this is a very slick surface here, because the moisture from the damp paper towel can get absorbed into the wood board, and if that side is damp and this side is dry, it ends up warping and cracking. But this is a sturdy, reliable board. Usually when you buy wood boards to prevent them from sliding, you buy big, heavy, really thick ones that just the weight keeps them on the counter. Okay.
To keep it stabilized so it doesn't.
Yeah, because like if I start chopping and my board is going back and forth, it's very unsteady and
fingers can
uncomfortable.
Be lost
exactly. Exactly.
Okay, that's good. And about the different kind of knives that you have brought with you today.
Yeah, so let's talk about knives. People often buy knife sets, and I'm kind of anti-knife sets, because people think, well, I'll get a deal. I'm going to pay for 5 knives and get 10. You're going to pay for 10 and get 10, but most of them you don't need. You only need, 3 knives plus a bread knife. I didn't bring one because, well, bread knife just cuts bread. It's, by the way, it's the only serrated knife.
Yes.
I did not realize such a thing exists until students started bringing me knives that are chef's knives with
That have
serration.
yes.
I'm like, well, that's like crying buckets of tears when you do those onions. So the only knife with serration is the bread knife. You don't sharpen it, you don't hone it, you leave it alone. Every like 2-3 years, I'll take it to a professional sharpener to give me a new edge, but mostly you leave it alone. These are the knives you use, and this is 99% of your kitchen tasks.
Okay.
This is a chef's knife. It's a big, chunky knife. This one is 8 inches, and the measurements are from beginning of the blade to the tip, not the handle. Handles are all different for different manufacturers. This is used for all vegetables. If you're chopping an onion, a pepper, zucchini, a radish, it doesn't matter what the vegetable is, you're using a chef's knife. This knife is called a boning knife.
Yes.
A boning knife is skinny and sometimes slightly flexible. See, mine has a little give to it. Some of them, they have both stiff formats and flexible, and this is semi-flexible. This is used for anything that had parents. Animals, chicken, fish, meat. If you're trimming silver skin from that tenderloin, or if you are removing skin from a fish fillet or deboning a chicken. This is the knife, and it's skinny so that it can get between those, the
bones,
little bones and skin and stuff like that. Very maneuverable. This is a paring knife, and unfortunately, I see too much use of this in home kitchens. It has very few applications. Trimming stuff, like say I have a beet and I need to trim the top. Anything I will do not on the board but in my hands, that's what you use a paring knife for. Really fine, in old classic French cooking, if they make fancy mushrooms, so like those fluid mushrooms that use this. Who does this nowadays, really, right? And at some point, people used to peel potatoes with this, but nowadays we have peelers. So you can core an apple, trim a beet or carrot or something like that. Section citrus fruit. So citrus fruit is an exception. Taking those sections of an orange or grapefruit out, that's one case where it's a fruit, but you don't use a chef's knife, you use either boning or paring, because it's really more like working with meat, where you have those membranes and you're trying to carefully remove that section. It's kind of very fine work versus, chop, chop, chop.
Now, as far as a chef knife is concerned, does the size of your hand matter the size of the knife?
No, it's mostly the size of the board. You need the board big enough to fit your knife. I usually recommend 8 inches as one all-purpose knife. Because if you have a garlic clove, a 10-inch knife can do a garlic clove. But if you have a butternut squash and you bought yourself a 6-inch knife, that's not going to go through a butternut squash. Usually with sizes of hands, it's the handle that makes the biggest difference, not the length of the blade. And the handles, different companies have different handles. I find for me this works great, and I don't have particularly big hands, and there are big guys for whom this works great too. But I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I just bought her first chef's knife. And there is a company, Captain Cook, who makes real chef's knives, but for kids, where the handle is thinner. They also say that women with very small hands like them because it's a thinner handle and it doesn't have a sharp tip here. But other than that, it's sharp and it's great. It's a fabulous little chef's knife. Yeah, so she's been learning to use a claw grip and all that.
And one more thing, I see you have a mandolin over there, so we can let's talk about that. How do you use a mandolin safely?
The guillotine,
I've seen bad accidents on those things.
Bad accidents. If you know how to use the claw grip correctly, you basically never cut yourselves with knives. But for professionals, this is the #1 reason for trips to emergency room. So this is a mandolin. It's a Japanese one. This is what most of us use. We don't buy those big contraptions because they are hard to wash and big, lots of storage space. This is called Ben Renner slicer. Ben Renner is the company who makes them. You have a little knob here that you adjust the thickness. So you can get thicker and thinner slices. And unfortunately here, there's no technique that will guarantee your safety. There's no, once you get to that blade, if you swipe through it with your fingertips, you take off the whole fingertip. So what I recommend people do is buy themselves cut-resistant gloves. You can buy this on Amazon. There's something like $12 for a pair. This is not an opportunity to throw caution to the wind. I mean, it's not that if you keep scrubbing your glove, you won't eventually cut through the glove, but it is really great for, like, if you by accident swipe once, that it's going to be the glove, not your finger.
Okay.
This is, well, at least online they say it's something like 4 times sturdier than leather. Like, it takes that much more force to cut through than leather, and then you can use.
Now, I know most mandolins, when you buy them, they come with a guard.
You know, this came with a guard, and the problem with that guard is that if I was slicing a brick, that would work really well. But unfortunately, most vegetables, especially the types that you might want to do in a mandolin, like a radish, they're round, and you put those prongs in, and it basically takes out half the vegetable. You waste half the vegetable, but then also it goes just, you do a few slices and then it goes rolling. It like basically kicks it off. So because only a few of those prongs are deeply embedded and the rest of them are kind of on the side.
Okay.
And so I find that there are mandolins with good safeguards, but they're usually big contraptions.
Okay.
And people pull them out once a year on Thanksgiving to slice those potatoes, and then it goes back in the storage. And this is something I use basically daily, several times a day sometimes, because it's so great. There are a whole bunch of vegetables which are delicious raw. Zucchini, radishes, fennel, but you need to cut them really thin. And even with fabulous knife skills, cutting something like this on a board, if you want it round, is tricky because, well, round things roll around.
Definitely.
And so if you want it round, you want potatoes for potatoes, a gratin, and you want them round, this is a real savior. You know, this works great. And I find that you end up eating way more salads, interesting salads, not just leafy greens, if you learn to use a mandolin, because it opens the door to all sorts of cool vegetables being eaten raw.
Okay, so let's have a little demonstration of.
All right, so let's sharpen our knives. Yeah, let's hone. So, so honing. If you do decide to go this route, so here I have it's called a honing rod. Mine is made out of ceramic. It could be made out of all different materials. But what I did was, so I folded a piece of paper. This used to be a piece of paper like this, and this is your 90 degrees. And this, if you fold in half, would be 45. I'm going to do this roughly because I did this one carefully. 45 degrees, and half of 45 is 22 and a half, which is realistically as close as you can get with a human eye to the angle of your knife, which is about 20. At least Western style knives. Things like Wurst of Henkel's, Victorinox, Sabatier. As long as you're avoiding Japanese style knives, will be about 20 degrees. So we're going to take this little triangle that I made out of paper, and I put a double-sided piece of tape here so that I can stick it on top. Eventually, you don't need this. Eventually, you get good at this, and you can steal without a guide. But in the beginning, when you're learning, this is very handy. So I have this little rubber tip, which is it turns out not very easy to buy. So I suggest people take like a towel or something and stick it on a towel. So if they have a very slick counter, so that their stick doesn't slide around. So you're gonna set up your steel on the counter, and you're gonna align your knife with that little piece of paper. This gives you an idea of what is that angle, because when you say 20 degrees, well, what the heck is 20? Is this 20 or is that 20 or is that, you know, it's hard to judge. So this little guide helps you out. And the most important thing is that you maintain it. So as I pull through, my arm is very stiff, like a robot. I'm not moving my wrist, because if I move my wrist, I'll change the angle. And then what good is this? It's not making a straight line. So we're gonna align on top and pull through. The speed doesn't matter at all. You do not need to press hard at all. It's very, very light. And it's about 3 per side. That's it. That's all you have to do on a daily basis. If learning this and maintaining the angle and all that is a pain, then here is a really fabulous tool. It's called AccuSharp. It has this little V that keeps the angle for you. There are lots of tools of this style. The reason I chose this is because it's the cheapest. It's about $10. And what people and all those tools don't tell you is that they all wear out. Steels wear out over a very long time, like maybe 5 years. But this wears out over several months. So for this to be effective, you do need to replace it fairly frequently, assuming you use it daily. So it's not honing. This is sharpening, but very gentle sharpening, because there's aggressive sharpening where you go to a professional sharpener and they grind. You know, but this is just a tiny, tiny bit. So you know, you set this on top, and you pull through, about 3 times. And you make sure to get the tip, because some people go like this, and then, well, they only sharpened half of the knife, not the whole knife. So 3-4 swipes, and that's all. So it's a really fast thing. People say, oh, if I need to sharpen every day, I'm going to cook. I'm going to be so much slower. Well, if you have a sharp knife, you're going to be faster, and it really takes 15 seconds to do it. It's not a long time at all.
People need to realize that a dull knife is more dangerous than a really sharp knife.
Oh, right, because you need to push harder.
Yeah.
Now, I often hear from cooks that when they buy a nice new knife and it's really sharp, they cut themselves. But that's not the fault of the knife. That's not tucking in the fingertips. So they're used to the dull knife, like if you brush your fingertips, nothing happens. So that's why we use a claw grip to hide our fingertips so that we don't cut them. And by the way, so you should rinse your knife after this. Yeah, we don't have a way to rinse it. Right here, we'll wipe it on the glove. How about that? There.
Okay. Okay, so you have some parsley, there's carrot.
Oh, I have all sorts of
onions,
stuff.
celery.
But you know what? Before we cut any vegetables, we're going to learn to hold the knife. Because the cutting, whether it's a pepper or carrot, it all works the same way once you understand the pinch grip and claw grip. So here's how pinch grip works. You put the thumb on the blade and the index finger wraps around. So I'm holding, I'm pinching the blade itself. When I hold out here, I don't have any control over what's happening in my cutting point, you know. So it's kind of like holding a tennis racket way out where, you know, you don't have much control. Where here I do. I'm not putting it where it's sharp. I'm just putting it on the blade, which is not to be confused with the edge. Edge is the sharp part. Okay, and the knife doesn't jump around. It rolls, kind of like as if I have a little crank that I'm cranking. The less I move, the less I'm likely to cut myself, and the faster I am. Like if I need to do this, then, you know, it's a whole bigger deal, and this way it's nice and fast. Now this hand does a claw grip. It means that all the fingertips are tucked in, kind of like a lion.
So you keep them,
Yeah, exactly. Usually we prefer to keep your fingertips on you, not in your salad. And these are my little knife guards. My knuckles, they actually attach to the knife, which when people are learning, they find very worrisome. Like, you want me to touch the sharp object? So we're not touching it where it's sharp. We're touching it right here in the back of the knife where you have lots of space. The reason we chop here is so that we don't have to lift the knife too much. If we chop here, we have to lift the knife a lot, and there's not that much space for my knuckles here. So I am way out here. So, and the best way to learn this is to hold the ball. You know, a bag of onions is great because there'll be onions of all different sizes to fit any hand size. So let's see. This one fits me very nicely. So you see how all my fingertips are on the ball? If they leave the ball, well, they can get chopped off, and that's not good. So your hand hold looks kind of like this, as if you're chopping while holding a ball. So and you can hold tennis ball, whatever, ping pong ball, depending on the hand size. Of course, eventually you don't chop while holding a ball. This is just to learn this.
To get your hand in the habit of holding
And so
it.
how does this look with a vegetable? Well, let's start with celery before we'll get to crying onions later. So we're going to trim our celery here a little bit, and let's start with slicing. So first you want it to be steady on your board. So let's see. Yeah, this is pretty steady. If it was wobbly and rocking, what I would do is maybe like trim it a little like that to keep it nice and flat, because vegetables unfortunately are usually either round or really weirdly shaped. I wish they were like bricks. It would make our life a lot easier. So here's my pinch grip, my claw grip, and I'm sitting on celery. Okay, and this hand, my guiding hand, the claw grip hand, it gradually shifts back, and as it shifts back, you know, that controls the size of the pieces. If I want really paper thin pieces, these are not very thin, but if I want paper thin pieces, I'll just keep it in one spot, and then you can get this tiny, very thin pieces. And if I want bigger pieces, I'm gonna move it back faster. And moving it back and chopping at the same time is an acquired skill. It's kind of like playing the piano with two hands. You have to learn one hand and then the other hand, and eventually it happens at the same time. So in the beginning, you might go chop, 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 readjust, left hand. Chop, 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 readjust, left hand. Oh, for me it's left, but you know, if you're left, you'd be right. So that's slicing. And if you're dicing, that's cutting into cubes.
Yes.
So for celery or any vegetable, what I would do is first portion it into pieces of reasonable size, because we'll be cutting lengthwise. And lengthwise through a very long stick is very difficult. So what we'll do is work with chunks about this size.
Okay.
And then we'll put it on a board. Let's see, what's the best way to... Celery is weird. It's like this warped stick. So I'm gonna try to just cut a little bit off this way. Now it's nice and steady. So now that I got the steady situation, I can cut it lengthwise, and it should look like French fries, kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna turn your French fries around and dice them. This is little cubes. In the end, you go slowly because there's not that much to hold. So this is dice. Should we do a carrot?
Sure.
Let's do a carrot. Now,
Carrots are hard.
Carrots are hard. It's a hard vegetable, especially this one. I mean, this
It's a
could
huge
win,
carrot.
at the state fair, as a biggest carrot of Massachusetts. Oh, man. Okay, so carrots, it's 3 steps to get them done because they are 3-dimensional. Celery, well, it's all 3-dimensional, but it's kind of already like a board, just a warped board. But carrots, they're like this. So what I would do is first, let's cut off one side. We'll use it. It's not a discard. So that we have a flat surface.
Okay.
Now our carrot won't roll around. That's usually a good thing because rolling things are very difficult to deal with. And we're going to get ourselves planks. Planks are like little boards, like that. It's planks. Okay, then we're going to arrange planks on the cutting board. And you know what? We're going to do this good practice of cleaning our boards so that we have more space. So you know what? I'm going to collect all of the celery and move it out of the way so that we can see the carrot better. Okay, good. So here we have our carrot planks. We're going to line them up, have a lot of ducks in a row, and get French fries out of them. In French, we call that bâtonnet, which means sticks, literally. Somehow there's lots of terms, cooking terms in French. People think it's super fancy once you say it in French, but it really just means a stick. So you got your sticks. Okay, then you're going to turn your sticks around, and if you have lots of them, you need to make multiple piles, because you put them all together, and they basically just fall apart. So here we go. Actually, even that, sometimes people get so ambitious and make these huge piles. I actually prefer more smaller piles than one big pile. And then we go the other way. And that is carrot dice.
Okay.
And something like that.
And as we were talking before we came on the air about the fact that this is all technique, it's more like a foundation.
Exactly.
It's not recipes, it's a foundation. Good knife skills are important. They're very important to have, because if you don't have good knife skills, you're liable to end up, instead of the chicken being butchered, you're going to end up butchering yourself. It's
true.
easy. Chicken's very slippery, and if you not know how to hold, like taking the wing off can be very difficult if you're not
If you know where the joints
where to
are,
grip
yeah.
it and where to cut it and how to hold the knife. So this is a good way to teach technique, the basics of how to start cooking, and also for seniors, it's important that they take their time with this. You don't have to be speedy like
No, you do
Guy
not need
Fieri
to
or
be
somebody like
fast
that,
at
chopping and vegetables flying all over the kitchen. You want to keep all your vegetables on the table where you can use them afterwards, not on the ceiling. So it's good to learn how to hold the knife right, learn how to hone the knife. And if as a senior, if you're afraid to do that for yourself, it's okay to have somebody else do it for you. Because I was telling you, my fiance does it. I'm not afraid of it. He feels like that's his part.
It's good to have somebody in the house who knows how to do
somebody
this.
in the house to know how to do it. But knife safety is very important. So just be very careful with your knives. And again, sharpening is taking metal off, and you send it to a professional. Honing is different. You can use the steel over there, the ceramic steel, or you can
do light sharpening with little tools
light
like
sharpening.
that. Yeah.
So that's very good to know. So Helen, I appreciate you coming on with us today.
Thank you, Annette.
Where can we reach you at?
HelenRennie.com.
Okay.
Or you can just Google for Helen's Kitchen in Natick, Helen's
Okay.
Kitchen Cooking School. Yeah, and my schedule is all up there.
All
So if
right.
anybody wants a knife skills class, they can come to my
All
house.
right. So thank you again for coming. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you showing us your knife skills and the different ways to use the blades and the dangers of the mandolin. I appreciate it. And I had a really nice time talking to you about this. So again, I thank you for watching Seniors Count, brought to you by Mayor of Boston, Martin J. Walsh, and our Commissioner, Emily K. Shea. And to contact us, please give us a call at 617-635-4366 and the Mayor's 24-hour hotline at 617-635-4500. Or you can email us at elderly@boston.gov, and you can also find us on Facebook. And you have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
I see skies of blue and clouds of white, bright blessed days, dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself,